Whatever it is, those links are.
1, 2, 3. Tim's not on here, though.
Yeah, I know what it is.
We should be okay. Hey, Mr. Tischer, can you hear us? Tim, can you say something?
I believe we're having a little bit of technical issues. We'll start the meeting very shortly. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Tish, are you with us?
All right, thank you for your patience. I'm going to call the Columbia Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Councilman Coleman,
Here.
Dr. Martin,
Here.
Mayor Mulder, Mr. Pace, Mr. Shannon,
Here.
Mr. Sloan,
Here.
Mr. Goode.
Here, we have a quorum present. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. I'd like to start with welcoming Mr. Sloan. This will be his first planning commission. Thank you for serving on this board with us, and we look forward to serving with you. The rules of conduct, there's a sign-up sheet out front. If you want to speak on a matter, you'd have an opportunity to sign up. We'll call you to the podium. You state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to speak on said matter. Next item is going to be the acknowledgement. First item to discuss the acknowledgement of the official communications of the Columbia City Council on annexation and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is one of those odd times of the year where City Council has met twice since your last meeting. So we'll go over January and February's meeting for your update. So January, you had one item on there, and that was the first consideration of Ordinance 4491, which was the ordinance to rezone 6218 Casey Lane from a Character District 2 to a Character District 3L, and that was denied on first consideration. Moving on to February, the second consideration for the approved Connect Columbia update that Kevin and his staff has been working on was approved on the final and second consideration there. So it's now in effect. First ordinance on 4495, which is an ordinance to amend 200 Oakwood Drive from CD3L to CD3 was approved on first consideration, as well as 807 Anthonyum Street from CD3 to CD4 was also approved on first consideration. And then finally, the first consideration to amend zoning ordinance regarding textual changes was approved on the first considerations with regards to, if you'll recall, the design review team becoming a part of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Keltner. And just to clarify, was the Connect Columbia, the new, so that was under, that's passed now, City Council?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second and final consideration.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Everyone should have an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll verbally call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Next item is review of bonds and letters of credit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All letters of credit are in order or in the process of being updated.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Brings us to no consent items, so we'll have discussion items. And I see that the audience is not quite as large as I had anticipated it to be, but still in the essence of time, I think I would like to ask this commission if it'd be okay to move items 5 and 6 to the top of the agenda, as those were going to be rather lengthy discussion items, but the applicant has requested a deferral on those. So if everybody's in agreement, I'll move those first, and then we'll go back into order. So I'll start with item 5, which is a request from Greg Gamble for approval of annexation with a plan of services and zoning to PUD R residential plan unit development under a preliminary PUD site development plan for an approximate 410 acre portion of property at 400 Bear Creek Pike, being tax map 90 parcels 12.01. As stated, the applicant has requested a deferral for this, so I think I'll make a motion to go ahead and defer that item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Coleman. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. That item's deferred. Similarly, item number 6, request from Greg Gamble for annexation approval with a plan of services comprehensive plan amendment to urban neighborhood and zoning to CD4 General Urban Character District for an approximate 3-acre portion of tax map 90 parcel 12.01 located at 400 Bear Creek Pike. On that item as well, applicant has requested a deferral, and I'll make that motion to defer as well.
I'll second. I do have some questions for planning, though.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. We'll open it up for discussion.
Mr. Keltner, just do we know why they were requesting the motion to defer or the deferral?
For this one right here, it's a part of the same request there. One part is a small parcel. They're running concurrently together. The other one was the remaining. That's why it's a portion of 410 acres. They wanted a portion of it as a PUD, and then one of it to be standing alone. I think it's maybe 2 acres in size for that particular piece. For that, so that's why you're seeing 2 items, both of them being requested. So they're just wanting those run together.
Right. Sorry, I meant to ask that on the first one, but yes, both of these items.
They are related.
The reason why they wanted to defer, just so the public.
Mostly because of some comments that they received with regards to utilities, in particular some of the sewer that may affect the layout on that. Maybe that may give some more times for staff to also restate some of our comments to them as well.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure the public.
But the big thing was sewer.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to defer. We'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye, that item's deferred. Now we'll go back to our regular order. We'll start with number 1, request from West Engineers and Surveyors for comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use classification of 2 parcels off Morningside Lane being tax map 89E Group F parcels 1.01 and 1.02 from urban neighborhood to suburban neighborhood, and to rezone the property to from CD3L Large Neighborhood Character District to CD3 Neighborhood Character District.
Yes, sir. You recall that this commission voted, I believe, in November to recommend approval of a rezoning of this piece of property to CD4. The city council considered it and thought that CD3 would be more appropriate and referred it back to the planning commission, and the applicant revised their proposal to show a concept conforming to CD3 standards to request a comprehensive plan amendment to suburban neighborhood, which would allow from urban neighborhood to suburban neighborhood under the previous comprehensive plan, which would allow it to be zoned to CD3. Last month, you all considered some comments from wastewater and decided to defer to gather more information about this. So as it is right now, the comprehensive plan amendment is no longer necessary because this commission, under the new comp plan, this commission can determine that CD3 is appropriate in the city center urban village future land use classification, which is sort of that whole center part of the city. And then I think that you all have further studied the issue and reviewed Mr. Filipkowski's comments as it relates to wastewater capacity in this area.
So, and on that note, Mr. McCarthy, I think just to clarify it with me, with its rezone request, we have to look at the bigger picture that our sewer plant, our capacity can be handled there. Any improvements that have to be made would come along with the next phase, which would be like a preliminary plat, and at that point would be whether or not any improvements need to be made to pump stations or anything of that nature. Is that's correct? My understanding.
Yes, sir, that's exactly right. So this request is about basically the color on the map, right? This is about the underlying zoning. Which set of rules do we apply when somebody does come in to develop the site? There's no actual development proposed in this case. So one of the criteria for rezoning one of the criteria, I should say, for rezoning is that sufficient wastewater treatment capacity, roads, water, school capacity is in place. So that's talking about system-wide, can you handle that additional increase in density in this case? When somebody actually comes in to develop the site, then wastewater will tell them what's necessary to accomplish what they want to do, and it'd be on the developer, either on their own or in cooperation with other developments, to actually bring the infrastructure up to that standard so that they could develop it. So right now, as it stands, with its 3L zoning, you could probably do 8 units. The density would allow, and the zoning ordinance would allow 8 units on this site, but they probably couldn't actually accomplish that without significant improvements to the wastewater system.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. And Mr. Vick, I know you signed up. Did you have anything you wanted to add from previous month? Or anything?
Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the clarification. I think, based upon that, I'll make a motion to approve. I just want to make it noted that, this isn't guaranteeing any sewer for that development, that would be for, when somebody comes along with a plat, then they could see that they're going to have some significant improvements that have to be made. So that I'll make the motion to approve. I have a second by Dr. Martin. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goat,
Aye. Motion passes. Oh, she moved.
Yep.
Next item on our agenda is going to be the item 4. Item 4, request from Andrew Wiseman to approve partial revocation of the Villages at Carter's Creek PUD Master Plan with rezoning to CD4C General Urban Corridor Character District at 2425 Nashville Highway.
This also was deferred from your last month's agenda, and this is a request from the applicant to partially expire a planned unit development master plan and then rezone it to CD4C, our commercial corridor zoning, which is consistent with at the time of the application, the suburban corridor future land use classification, and now the suburban neighborhoods where it's adjacent to a roadway like Nashville Highway can be implemented by CD4C. One of you had asked me to verify, so the current master plan shows 33,000 square feet of office and retail uses in 3 buildings, and they're composed of 12,000, 11,000, and 10,000 square feet respectively. And it shows parking and access to the site, and it's between what's called the Citizen House apartment complex and the stormwater pond that's immediately adjacent to Nashville Highway. The concept plan provided by the applicant depicts a convenience store and a car wash, and it roughly, they demonstrate that they could conform to the CD4C standards, although we'd probably have a lot of comments at a staff level when they actually come in with a detailed site development plan. Right now, under the PUD MU standards, if they wanted to revise the master plan to do that, they'd have to ask for significant deviations from those standards. And I believe that the applicant, in your packet, so the applicant provided, since the deferral, a proposal to place a deed restriction on the property that would prohibit uses that the city of Columbia did not find appropriate. And that would be outside of our land use control. So it's certainly, I think, Mr. Tischer may want to comment on that, but that would be an unusual situation, and I believe the city has declined previous requests similar to that.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. I see we have Colin Offhammer. Offhammer. Did you want to come up and add any comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Colin Offhammer. Thank you all for letting me speak. I've actually emailed with a number of you before and spoken with some of you over the phone. Can you all hear me okay? That's all right? Great. So I was not present this last meeting. My engineer, Andrew Wiseman, was present to present for that topic that was deferred to this meeting. And I went back and rewatched. I was watching live. I went back and watched the footage from this meeting a month ago 2 or 3 times, as well as went back and looked at the Honey Farms meeting that was a similar rezoning request, because I really wanted to understand the hesitations from City Council as well as any hesitations from this commission relative to that request. The request being rezoning from a PUD to CD4. And one of the things that a few of the things that I heard and I really wanted to understand was, I think Commissioner Mulder said that a primary concern was that it might not be commercial, meaning that if a rezone was passed under CD4C, I believe there's still an allowance for residential uses, that there was some concern that residential uses would go in there, and the city's primary entry corridor where it would make a lot of sense for there to be commercial. And I think Commissioner Goetz, I think you said something similar. And if I'm not repeating this verbatim, forgive me, but I wrote down commercial is expected for the site, and that there is concern that there could be more multifamily buildings. And then Commissioner Keltner, I think you said something similar, that there's a desire for commercial, but with CD4C, there's not a requirement for commercial. And so I thought a lot about that. And one of the things that my engineer Andrew suggested in the last meeting was or proposed a restrictive covenant that would preclude any commercial or non-commercial uses on site. And I think I can't remember which commissioner stated this, but there was some concern that that legal, and I'm not sure if that was Mr. Tischer or someone else from City Legal, said that in the past there'd been some hesitation because a property owner that signed a restricted covenant could just lift the covenant and then develop whatever they wanted under that zoning. And so my counsel, Jake Walliver, who's present tonight, had some conversations with Tim about what we're trying to accomplish. And full disclosure, I do not want to develop any residential use on site at all, and would willfully encumber my site with a restrictive covenant to prevent me or any landowner. I'm planning to have a car wash buyer come in and purchase one of the tracts, and then ideally a convenience gas station user come in and acquire the rest of the tract. And their plan is not do any residential. But to prevent that from happening, Tim suggested or thought it would be a viable option to have a very short restrictive covenant. I've provided a draft here, and I'm happy to, I've got it here. I would plan to read it, or a portion of it. And if you're able to pull it up on the screen, that could be helpful as well. That would, prevent any residential use, would also require any uses on site in CD4C to be defined as commercial uses per the zoning code. And then that the restrictive covenant cannot be lifted without a resolution from City Council. And so that's really what I'm proposing. And I do not, again, have any desire for residential use. I don't want more multifamily there. The Citizen House Apartments, I think it's a great development, and residents that are there were about 50% leased, and I think 45% occupied, are really pleased with it. And so my plan is to deliver, next door uses that I think will be complementary to the area, in an area where there's really not a lot of commercial, and I want to deliver that. And so that's part of the reason I'm coming up with this restrictive covenant idea, that Mr. Tischer, in speaking with Jake, seemed to think was a viable option, particularly if I was trying to find a way that me or some future owner couldn't lift that without City Council approval. So that's really what I was trying to accomplish with the rezone request. And at least in my mind, if you all are receptive to that idea, and if that there'd be, ideally, in my mind, there'd be a vote to approve that rezone request tonight, but that would not go to City Council until this restrictive covenant is fully, vetted by the city, that Tim has had a chance to review it, and, the planning department as necessary, that would be, if we can come to an agreement on that, then that document gets signed, and then it would go to City Council for a vote. And so this, if there's approval today, it's not approving the rezone at the City Council, doesn't become effective. It just is a green light to start processing this restrictive covenant and figuring out if this makes sense. So if you're okay, I would love to just read, unless you all have already taken a look at it.
Now we have a copy here that
Great.
We have in front of us. I think you probably summarized it pretty good there. But I'd like to see if maybe Mr. Tischer, is he available, or does he have any comments? Or if he can.
Sure.
Speak.
Mr. Tischer, were you able to hear all that?
Reckon not.
Um,
Oh, there he goes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tischer, this is Colin Offhammer. If I may, I apologize. I misspoke. In no way did I mean to insinuate that you suggested this. This was an idea that my attorney and I came up with, and we simply broached the idea to you to see if you thought it was even reasonable or feasible at all. So apologies if I misspoke there. Understand completely.
Thank you, Mr. Tischer. I have a couple of questions, if I can.
Sure, please.
Because you listened to last month, so I know you weren't here, but your colleague was.
Yes.
And one of the comments that was made stuck with me that he said, because the comment was made just like you're saying, well, it would allow to be able to have more residential beside it, and he said, and I quote, I wouldn't put residential beside a car wash. But I'm like, but you want to put a car wash in front of residential. That kind of, stuck with me as like, it's kind of the same thing, and I didn't know. I mean, I think what I'm thinking about the most of this is, the city approved it as a PUD, and we were sold on there's going to be these 3 retail spaces in the front of it here,
Sure.
Pretty large retail spaces,
Sure.
and now we're trying to down, for lack of a better word, and which is sometimes seems to be the going thing with PUDs, as much as I hate to say that, but. I think if you're wanting to get some variances, because I know the PUD program might be a little bit difficult, and if it's the fact that you're kind of wanting to grab some variances, 2-story buildings might be hard to get done with, might be something that I'd want to consider, but, I don't know that just pulling it completely out of the PUD to allow, some downsizing of it is necessarily what the intention was when the city approved it, when it was approved and sold to us as a developer. So, that's my thoughts. Mr. Coleman, yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess, what is the actual proximity, if this were to be a car wash? What is the actual proximity to it and residential? Is there any more residential coming that much close around it? Or are we talking about Honey Farms, like the residential part?
I'm talking about the apartments right behind it.
Apartments are behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically right in front of the apartments is where
Sure. There's another. I don't have dimensions in front of me, but there's another detention pond there. That's a larger detention pond than the one in the front, in between those parcels and Nashville Highway. And then there's I think a 10 or 12 foot high retaining wall that runs along the length of the site or the width of the site.
I would just say, my thought would not necessarily get hung up on that comment, although I can see what you're saying. But that is mostly what we have going up and down all of Nashville Highway. I mean, like where I live in Riverside, all of that is directly behind, everything along Nashville Highway there, like the Bella Pizza, the car lot that's right there, Muletown Motors, I believe it's called. And so I guess I see things like commercial being that close to residential is somewhat patternistic up and down Nashville. Would you not agree?
commercial, yeah. Yeah, there's just, when he said specifically to a car wash is what I thought. Well, I wonder why why you wouldn't put commercial, a car wash right in front of me. I don't know if it's the noise of the car wash running, what, but that's what struck with me. The other side to it is, the previous plat that was recorded shows these 11, I think, as Kevin mentioned, 11 to 12,000 square foot, big, large retail, facilities going in there, and not going to be restaurant, and, things of that nature. Now, potentially,
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Shalom.
So is the document 23418 Village at Carter Station that we've got in our package, is that the current PUD that's that it's currently zoned for? Shows some multifamily buildings, a mixture of buildings, parkings, and then there's the 3 out parcels that are closest to Nashville Highway.
Yes, sir. So on the screen, the bottom left image, that's an excerpt from the 2021 revision of the PUD. And
Okay.
It provides for what's now the Citizen House at Spring Hill apartment complex, and then these 3 commercial outbuildings, as well as the stormwater facility.
Okay. That's all. I know that, and this kind of speaks to you, Councilor Coleman, but PUDs, they're usually looked at as a whole. So like the residential portions of those feed into the commercial portions. So they're meant to be like a restaurant that the apartment goers could go to, or a retail shop that could be frequented by people off Nashville Highway, but also people that live in that neighborhood. And I think the idea of rezoning it to take it out of the PUD kind of, it's like part and piecing a whole package, right? Like you kind of take a whole package and you're just piecemealing it out. Yeah, that's the difference.
I guess my thought is, I mean, since 2017, obviously a lot's changed. We're changing our comprehensive plan that was also put together around the same time. So I see it as somewhat kind of the nature of things. The market is obviously what what drives everything that we do. Us trying to, I don't know, control it to make it a restaurant, because restaurant keeps coming up. So I'm not really sure what we can do to make sure a restaurant goes there, but that's going to be determined by the market anyways. It could never be a restaurant.
Well, and I think in what Mr. Sloan is saying, it's not an attempt of us trying to control it as much as it was designed on the front end to be something controlled by being a PUD. It was already designed that way.
My perspective when I came in to council and then planning was really that PUDs were sort of happening as often as they were, almost as a transition to getting a proper update to our zoning ordinance, which is because when I first came on, we had PUDs all the time. We were always having to dissect this, and I was thinking, is this what planning commission and city council is always dissecting these developments all the way down, to the nitty gritty. And then that's when Mr. Keltner kind of informed me about the changes we were making, which we now have. So I guess my feeling is like this is the plan that we created was to use zoning to allow the market the freedom to create what needs to go there, what the market's demanding go there. I don't know. I guess I just feel like what may have been put together back in 2017 probably wasn't executed because it wasn't financially, profitable. And so I guess it's hard to get anybody, whether it's this gentleman and his company or any other company, to come in and do something that the market's not demanding there.
Yeah, but one could also say that the market is changing there now, and demand is changing as across the street and everything's getting developed around it. So your point is there, but.
I mean, and that I guess I would also say it does feel like staff is pretty supportive of this throughout the staff report. So in my opinion, it feels like we're trying to maintain control over something which is really there's a plan ready to go from other developers, because obviously the reference that he made to the other development that failed the city council, I felt the same way. Why I supported that one at planning commission as well. If the point is for us to get away from PUDs and allow zoning to implement the controls that we need to have, but while also giving the flexibility for it to be, feasible, this just kind of seems like this is going to keep happening.
Well, and personally to me, I think that the new code book is designed to avoid getting more PUDs, but I don't think it was ever intended to eliminate existing PUDs and to rezone them out of the PUD that they were already under. I don't want to misspeak, but I never interpreted it that way. Those PUDs were there to kind of see them to the end, I guess you could say, would be my intention or interpretation of existing.
If you have a comment on that?
I think you can see it, that there will be cases that it would be better for the PUD to be removed. I think in this particular case, while definitely we're supportive of letting the ordinance itself be the guidance for development, we would not have allowed it to be developed in such a way that's developed right now, which, take for example, the detention pond across the front, which is actually a separate lot, which is then going to afford them allowances to not be able to use Nashville Highway as the frontage road, which gives them a lot of leeway in there, which was something that we would not have done if it had been planned out from the very beginning on that. But there's not a straight answer on that, other than there are definitely times where that will work, especially in places where maybe the PUD has not developed yet. But in this particular case, it's already set a pattern of development, which could be used actually against your ordinance to some degree in your current ordinance.
Is it worth us exploring the idea of a new PUD that fits, helps everyone be happy?
It wouldn't necessarily be a new PUD, so they would just come in and actually go through the process and actually submit the plan for whatever potential use they want to see in that particular site as they come. So then it still gives you the authority to look at the particular site. If there's any deviations that you want to do outside of the ordinance, then you have that ability. But it also for them, they can request deviations outside that ordinance as well.
And we have undone a few PUDs. Was the one by River Road, wasn't that a PUD that we redid?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'm not like particularly for a car wash or anything like that. I'm just saying, I feel like there needs to be some type of solution, I think, that we present as a council or as a commission, because we've had now two different of the pretty much pretty similar ideas in terms of how the developers would like to handle it. So it feels like there's a disconnect right now. So we need to come up with what we do want to have if we're not going to.
Well, I don't want to speak for the developer, but at least I think the way I understand it, and maybe from the previous one at Honey Farm, it was kind of stated this way, is the reason for doing this is to simplify getting something done. We're coming back and asking for revisions to the PUD to do the things that you want to get done. Maybe takes a little bit more time, and maybe you need to get a longer due diligence period with an applicant or with a potential purchaser of the property, and that's the direction we're trying to avoid. Is that what I understand?
I think you touch on a point. I think that's accurate, and I wanted to, if I may, one of the things that was suggested last meeting as well as earlier this meeting was, why not just proceed with PUD variances, and the thought there is that, at least if I'm interpreting this correctly, we're not necessarily taking issue with the intended or proposed use, right? I think, Eric McNeely, the civil engineer, is ready to proceed with submitting of plans, full civil plans for the car wash. And then I'm working with a, convenience gas station user that would follow ideally after that on the north side of the tract. And why not just proceed with variances? You're correct in that the goal is to minimize the number of times that we have to meet with not have to meet with staff, that staff needs to meet with us to talk through all these various solutions to how do we fit this use within PUD guidelines, and revisiting, redrawing, meeting again, more reviews. The goal was to, if there's receptivity to those uses via variances with the PUD, what is the difference between that and a rezone followed shortly thereafter by an application for that same use, and then not needing to go back to staff multiple times, and you all are busy, you're working on a ton of stuff beyond just this deal, being respectful of that time and trying to deliver the product as quickly as possible for people that live nearby, right? That was the thought process.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that based on what you heard here today. I mean, even Mr. Coleman himself said, I'm not crazy about it being a car wash. So I don't know that we're all receptive on that fact.
Understood.
So I mean,
Right.
I made the comment, maybe bring back some variances, and maybe what I meant by that was if you've got a McDonald's that wants to go in, that want to do a 2-story building, but it's still a retail or a restaurant type of establishment, that's something for consideration, is where I was.
Understood. I was basing that comment off of a comment that Mr. Mulder made last time,
Gotcha.
that he said, I don't necessarily have an issue with this use. I think, he said, I think commission would be receptive potentially to those two uses that I was discussing. That was basing off of that.
Yes, and I'll add that I'm not getting hung up on car wash necessarily either. I just, in general, I just wanted to. I understand the issue people may have with a car wash that close to their. I'm just saying, whatever it is that we want to happen with this property, I just think that we need to get clear on that as much as we can. See, there's between staff and commission, so that way there is a path forward to whoever does want to develop this. Because, but you guys, I would like to see something come into that big gap that's been there, for so long. Just not have it held up because we haven't figured out what we need or we want ultimately.
Well, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that was kind of predetermined with the PUD. You got these three retail spaces out front, so, I mean, but you have a comment, Mr. Sloan?
I think it was just a question, which is you were asking what's the difference in, rezoning it versus adhering to the PUD. And I would pose that question back to you. It's like, what's the difference? And if it's time, we if we approve something here, we kind of set a precedent, just like you were saying, we were kind of dismantling PUDs before. But if you continue down this path of like creating precedents, like that's something that we can control, and that as a legislative body or a board, we try to like be mindful of the precedent that we're creating, that we do. And so if we make this exception for you, then somebody else is going to go, oh, well, you did it for them and them and them, and kind of creates this thing where, if the PUD already has commercial uses at the front, and you're going for commercial uses at the front, does it really behoove us to rezone it when it could be something else if we rezone it?
What do you mean when you say when it could be something else if we rezone it?
So I think the general holdup was that it might not be commercial if it's rezoned, that it could be residential.
Right. And I agree with that. And that was one of the main things I was here to present, was that I heard that concern loud and clear, and I was trying to come up with a solution that I was hoping you all and city legal would be receptive to. Right. That was I think a huge concern that was mentioned, and one that I want to take off the table. Right. That's not something I want. That's not something I've not heard. This, and my broker is actually here, who's helped list this site and listed this site with the previous owner 5 to 6 years ago, and has been in the area for a long time. There's not been anything on this site, right? And I'm proposing something that I think I have a vested interest in how the apartments perform, right? And not just from a profitability standpoint, but it's a place where people live, right? And there are people that participate in this community that are that work here, that live here, that shop here, and I'm not just saying that. Like, I'm building homes for people to live in. And there's life is shared there, and I'm incentivized to put something on those retail parcels that isn't going to be a detriment to the people living right next door. Like, I wouldn't do it. I have a vested interest, profitably, but also just in how people like living there. I don't want to do something that wouldn't be received well.
I hear two issues, and I guess I just want to make sure we address them. One and this is the one I remember the most from from council and planning commission, was the concern about the residential that's allowed in the zoning. And so if we can address that, then I guess if that's not an issue anymore between the developer and us, then what is the other issue? And with the other issue, would it be what the item or what the commercial is looking like it's going to be, power wash or whatever? Or is that what our concern is, that we wouldn't want to move forward? Or is it something else? I guess I'm just trying to identify what the points are that we want to stick to.
I think, go ahead.
I just want to say, I believe the residential side was something that was still a concern.
That's what I thought too.
Right.
And so I feel like if, and I know that was, I feel like there's another development that, I guess it was the similar one to this,
Yes.
that we shut down.
The honey.
Right. Yeah. So I guess is the proposition that in between from the gentleman and his lawyer, in speaking with Mr. Tischer, is that a viable option, or is that what Mr. Tischer was saying? That's not?
Yes, Mr. Tischer, please. Thank you, Mr. Tischer. Yeah. And so if it's just, thank you, Mr. Tischer. Mr. Wilver's behind you. I think he wants to speak.
And probably my issue there, I wanted to give the city some control over that in the event that we're long gone and 50 years from now, there's distinctly different character to that area. Certainly I'll pull that provision and it'll just be a restriction against residential development. So that, again, that was in the hopes of giving you some leeway and leverage on that should the tables turn one day. But that's not a problem at all, and I can address Mr. Tischer's concern.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wilver. I think for me, the bigger thing is, of the criteria items that we have, to make a rezoning request, one of them is that it's been determined that conditions affecting the area have changed to a sufficient level to warrant the zoning map amendment. And I don't know that the changes have occurred other than just a desire to get out of the trying to conform to our PUD requirements of trying to get what you want to get done approved, either through variances or whatever. It's not that the market conditions have changed to warrant that. So based upon that, I'm going to make a motion to deny under 8.519E that I don't think conditions have changed to warrant the zone.
I'll second that.
I have a motion with a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
No.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goat,
Aye. Request is denied. Thank you. Next item tonight is item 5 on our agenda. Request from Alan O'Leary for preliminary and final plat approval of 3 lots at 1485 Bear Creek Pike and LaSaya Road.
Thank you, Mr. Goetz. This is a pretty simple request. It's just a replat of an existing lot located on LaSea and Bear Creek Pike. The applicant is also proposing 25 feet of right-of-way dedication along LaSea Road, and likewise, the applicant is providing an access easement where all tracks can collectively be accessed. Really, at this time, we don't have any development proposal for it. It's really just more of a housekeeping item. If in the future the applicant wishes to develop the property, certainly it would fall under the current zoning ordinance for the standards. It's currently zoned a CD4C, so a commercial parcel.
Mr. Brasso, staff sees no issues with the rezoning. It all conforms to ordinance.
It currently meets the current underlying zoning of CD4C. Yes, sir. For the lot configuration.
If I read it correct, something about just trying to match it up with some fence lines and stuff like that was the goal here.
Correct, and also doing the right-of-way dedication along LaSea Road.
Thank you. Mr. Vick, I know you signed up. Did you have anything to add or just here for comments? Okay. That being said, I'll make a motion to approve subject to any technical comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goat,
Aye. Motion's approved. Next item is request from Colton Davis for preliminary and final plat approval for properties at tax map 51, parcels 19, 20, and 20.01 at Nashville Highway and Greens Mill Road.
Thank you, Mr. Goetz. Somewhat similar to our previous request, this is just a lot consolidation to take 3 parcels and combine them into one, and also to provide right-of-way dedication on the north side of Greens Mill Road. This right-of-way dedication will improve the accessibility for the proposed intersection, traffic signal at Nashville Highway and Greens Mill Road. For some of the newer commissioners, this item is vested under the previous zoning code for a 4-story mixed-use building located at the corner, the south corner, and then also in the rear of the property. It's proposed to have 5 multifamily structures. And so again, it is vested under the previous code within a planning and development.
And Mr. Brass, this is my understanding, this is kind of the first step necessary to start some of the street improvements, things of that nature that are
Correct.
necessary.
The right-of-way dedication on the north end of Greens Mill Road allows room for the taper lanes that support the traffic signal.
And this plat here that we're looking at conforms to what was previously approved and all.
Correct. It allows for the right-of-way dedication. I do believe we did have an additional comment about a retaining wall. The current retaining wall was in the right-of-way. The applicant did respond to the technical comment that they're going to remove the retaining wall and replace it on the private property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brass. That being said, I'll make a motion to approve subject to any and all technical comments. I have a motion and a second by Dr. Martin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item tonight, request from Development Services for consideration and recommendation to City Council regarding revisions to the text of the zoning ordinance at 8.5.19, process and criteria for amendments to the official zoning map, and various sections under Articles 3 and 4 referencing Connect Columbia, the comp plan.
Yes, so if you recall, in December, you all recommended approval of a zoning text amendment that would make the language in the zoning ordinance that references the future land use map match up with the new future land use map that was just adopted. It also contained the making the Planning Commission the Architectural Design Review Commission, and it had some updates to the process for rezoning. You all had pulled out the piece for the architectural design review, so that has moved forward to first reading at council. It should be a second reading next month. But in speaking with the city attorney, the bigger piece that had gone on to council, we realized that it's probably a good idea to make some further adjustments in that 8519, the process for rezoning. And so that brought back the whole, because you had recommended it as one package, it brought it back to you this month. And it just changes the occasion of the public hearing. So right now, when something goes through the rezoning process and you all make a recommendation, it goes to first consideration and the council schedules a public hearing in the second consideration. And it's just modifies some of the text in that 8519 to make the public hearing at first consideration. And then if they get an affirmative vote at that first consideration, they go to second consideration. So just some housekeeping in the ordinance.
So that's the summary of the amendment that's being made here and requested here.
Yeah, so again, you recommended a lot of changes to the language in Articles 3 and 4 that makes the zoning ordinance match up with the terms used in the now current comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
But it had also included some modification to Article 8. So that whole package will go forward, but the only thing that's different is this order of the public hearing.
So what was previously approved is already, this part of it, but it's already moving forward with just this amendment here. So
Yeah, and I can certainly talk about that if you want, but I don't think there's any reason to.
Yeah, no, I think we discussed it at depth last time. So
Right.
yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the amendments.
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Coleman. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Items approved. Brings us to other business.
I would just like to say thank you to the commission for for coming to the joint session with council. That was very appreciative. Take time out to do that. And we learned a lot from the first one, and we'll look forward to the next session. Do we have a date for that yet, Kevin, for the second joint session?
Yes, sir. So this body will have a special meeting on March 6th, and then it will be the first Wednesday in May. Will be the joint study session.
So March 6th is going to be rolling out what we heard from the previous joint session, be further explored by this body. Okay.
Right.
I'd like to thank everybody for spending their Valentine's with Happy Valentine's Day. Any other business to discuss? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, we'll vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.